Hello, welcome back. My apologies if you've been waiting a couple of days for the next few chapters. On my YouTube channel, it said no views for part 4, 5 and 6. So I thought I was hugely ahead of the game, but it turns out that I know Monty has watched 4, 5 and 6. So I don't know why the YouTube channel is showing no views, but I thought I would waste no time and move on with part 7 so that you're not missing out. Right, chapter 13. The children didn't really feel that they wanted to go to any of the lands at the top of the faraway tree for a little while. It was a bit too exciting to climb through the clouds and see what was above them. But they did want to see their friends in the tree, especially dear old Moonface. So, the very next time they had a day to themselves, they set off through the Enchanted Wood to the faraway tree. There was no rope to guide them this time. It was only at night that the rope was swung through the boughs to help the woodfolk up and down. The children began to climb up. Every door and window in the tree seemed shut today, and not a soul was about. It was quite dull climbing up the tree. Even when they reached Silky's house, that was shut too, and they couldn't hear Silky singing or anything. They knocked, but there was no answer. So on they went up to Moonface's, keeping a good lookout for Mother Washalot's dirty water to come swishing down on them. But not even her water appeared that day. It all seemed very quiet and peaceful. They reached Moonface's house at the top of the tree and rapped at his door. Nobody opened, but inside they could quite well hear somebody crying. It was very mysterious. "It doesn't sound like Moonface," said Fanny, puzzled. "Let's go in and see who it is." So they opened the door and went in, and it was Silky, sitting in a corner, crying bitterly. "Whatever's the matter?" cried Joe. "And where's old Moonface?" asked Fanny. "Oh dear," sobbed Silky. "Moonface has been thrown up into some dreadfully queer land at the top of the faraway tree because he was rude to Mr. What's-his-name down below." "What? That old man who's always sitting in a chair and snoring?" said Bessie, remembering that they hadn't seen him that day. "Whatever did Moonface do?" "Oh, he was very naughty," wept Silky. "So was I. You see, we heard Mr. What's-his-name snoring as usual, and we crept up to him and saw that his mouth was wide open, and, oh dear, we popped a handful of acorns into it, and when he woke up he spluttered and popped, and then he caught sight of us hiding behind a branch." "Goodness, did you really dare to do such a naughty thing?" cried Bessie. "No wonder he was angry." "Moonface is dreadfully bad sometimes," said Silky, wiping her eyes. "He makes me naughty too. Well, we ran away up the tree to Moonface's house. I got in safely, but Moonface didn't. And Mr. What's-his-name caught hold of him and threw him right through the hole in the clouds into the land that is there today." "Good gracious! Well, can't he get back?" said Fanny in alarm. "He can climb down the ladder, surely, back into the tree." "Yes, he could," said Silky. "But, you see, Mr. What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder ready to catch him, spank him, and throw him back. So what's the use of that?" "What land is up there today?" asked Joe. "The land of the old saucepan man," said Silky. "He lives there in his cottage with his pots and pans, and is quite harmless. But you see, Mr. What's-his-name will sit on the ladder till the land swings round and another one comes. Then Moonface won't be able to get back, and he may be lost forever." "Oh dear," said Joe in dismay, and the girls stared at Silky in despair, for they were very fond of old Moonface now. "Isn't there anything we can do?" asked Joe at last. "Well, there's just one hope," said Silky, fluffing out her lovely golden hair. "The old saucepan man is a great friend of Mr. What's-his-name's. If he knew his land was at the top of the faraway tree today, he might come along and have a cup of tea with Mr. What's-his-name, and then Moonface could slip down the ladder back here. Oh, said the children, and looked at one another. They could quite well see that this meant one or all of them going up that ladder again and getting into another queer land. I'll go, said Bessie. After all, Moonface helped us last time. We must go help him now. We'll all three go, said Joe. So they set off up the topmost branch to the little ladder. There they found Mr. What's-his-name sitting reading his newspaper and smoking an enormous pipe that sent clouds of smoke out of the hole in the clouds. Please can we pass? Asked Bessie timidly. No, you can't, said Mr. What's-his-name rudely. Well, we've got to, said Joe. So if we tread on your feet, you must excuse us. Mr. What's-his-name simply wouldn't move. He really was a very cross old man. He slapped each of the children as they squeezed past him, and they were very glad when they had climbed through the hole and were in the land above. So this is the land of the Saucepan Man, said Fanny, when they were sitting on the grass safely. What a funny little land. It was. It was an island floating in what seemed a sea of white. It really wasn't much bigger than a large field. Bessie went to the edge and looked over. Gracious, she said in alarm. It's like a cliff, and the sea is a big white cloud. Don't go too near the edge, anybody. It wouldn't be nice to fall off. Hi, hi, suddenly yelled an excited voice. They turned round and saw Moonface waving to them and running hard towards them. Hi, how did you get here? Hello. We came to see what we could do for you, said Joe. We heard what had happened. Old Mr. What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder still, waiting for you. But Silky says this is the land of the Saucepan Man, who is a great friend of Mr. What's-his-name's. So we've come to see him and ask him if he'll go and have tea with his friend. Then you can slip down safely and go home. Ooh, good, said Moonface joyfully. I didn't know what land this was, and goodness me, I was quite afraid of falling off it. It's so small. Where do you suppose the old Saucepan Man lives? I can't imagine, said Joe, looking round. All he could see was a very large stretch of grass with no house and nobody at all in sight. Where in the world could the Saucepan Man live? We'll have to go carefully all round this funny little land, said Bessie. His house must be somewhere, but we'd better hurry, for you never know when the land will swing away from the faraway tree, and we don't want to live in this queer little place forever. They began to walk round the land. Presently, they came to a cliff that was not quite so steep as the others. They peered over it. Joe pointed to some things stuck in the cliff. Whatever are those? He said. They look like some sort of steps down the cliffside, said Bessie. They're saucepans, said Fanny suddenly. Yes, saucepans, with their handles stuck firmly into the cliff and the pan part to tread on. How queer. Well, this must be the way down to the Saucepan Man's house, said Joe, excited. Come on. Be careful, girls, or you may fall and roll right over the edge of this land. So, very carefully, they began to climb down the cliff, treading on the saucepans stuck into the earth. It really was rather funny. They got down at last, and then they heard a very curious noise indeed. It was a sound of crashings and bangings and clatterings and clangings. The children were quite alarmed. The noise is coming from just round the corner, said Joe. They crept very cautiously to the corner and peeped round. There they saw a crooked little house with a saucepan for a chimney. The noise came from inside the house. The children crept to the window and looked in. And inside they saw the strangest little man they had ever seen, dancing the strangest dance. He had saucepans and kettles hung all over him. He wore a saucepan for a hat, and he crashed 2 saucepans together as he danced. "Do you think he is dangerous?" said Joe in a whisper. Chapter 40. The Funny Old Saucepan Man. "I don't think he's at all dangerous," said Fanny. "He has quite a kind face." "Let's tap at the window," said Bessie. So she tapped, but the saucepan man took no notice. He just went on dancing away, crashing his saucepans together. Joe tapped loudly. The saucepan man caught sight of him at the window and looked most astonished. He stopped dancing and went to the door. "Come in and dance," said he. "Oh, no, thank you," said Joe. "We've just come to ask you out to tea." "Ask me for a bee?" said the saucepan man, looking surprised. "I'm so sorry, but I don't keep bees, only saucepans." "Not bees," said Joe, "to ask you out to tea." "But I don't want to go to sea," said the saucepan man. "I don't like the water at all. Never did. Very kind of you, I'm sure, but I hate the sea." "Not the sea, but tea, tea, tea," cried Joe. "Oh, tea," said the saucepan man. "Well, why didn't you say that before? Then I should have understood." "I did say it before," said poor Joe. "What? Shut the door?" said the saucepan man. "Certainly, if you want to, give it a push." "He can't hear very well," said Fanny. "He must be deaf." "No, I'm not," said the saucepan man, hearing perfectly all of a sudden. "Not a bit deaf. Only sometimes when my saucepans have been crashing round me rather a lot, I get noises in my ears afterwards. But I'm not deaf." "I'm glad of that," said Joe politely. "Cat?" "No, I haven't got a cat," said the saucepan man, looking all round. "Did you see one?" "I didn't say anything about a cat," said Joe patiently. "You did. I heard you," said the saucepan man, vexed. "I don't encourage cats. I keep mice instead. I shall look for that cat." And then, with his saucepans clanging around him, he began to look for a cat that certainly wasn't there. "Puss, puss, puss," he called. "Puss, puss, puss." "There's no cat in your house," shouted Moonface. "Mouse? Where did you see a mouse?" said the old man, alarmed. "I wouldn't like one of my mouse to be caught by your cat." "I tell you, we haven't got a cat," cried Joe, feeling quite cross. "We've come to tell you about your friend, Mr. What's-his-name." For a wonder, the saucepan man heard Joe, and he at once stopped looking for the cat. "Mr. What's-his-name?" he cried. "Where is he? He's a great friend of mine." "Well, wouldn't you like to go and have tea with him then?" said Joe. "Yes, certainly I would," said the saucepan man. "Please tell me where he is." "He's sitting on the ladder leading from the faraway tree to your land," shouted Joe. "He's waiting there." "Yes, for me," said Moonface in a whisper. "Shh," said Fanny. The saucepan man gave a yell of joy when he heard where his old friend was, and he set off for the cliff, shouting in delight. "Hurrah! I've come to the faraway tree, and I can see my friends again. And Mr. What's-his-name is waiting for me to have tea with him. Come on, come on." Up the cliff he went, treading on the saucepan steps, his own saucepans and kettles rattling and banging all round him. The children and Moonface followed. The saucepan man ran helter-skelter to the hole that led down to the topmost branch of the faraway tree, dropping a few saucepans on the way. When he got there, he peered down and saw Mr. What's-his-name sitting on the ladder, watching for Moonface. But the saucepan man didn't know that, of course. He thought that his friend was waiting for him. "Hi, hi, hi!" he yelled, dropping a saucepan on top of Mr. What's-his-name in his excitement. "Hi, old friend!" Mr. What's-his-name watched the saucepan bouncing off his foot down the branch of the faraway tree and wondered who it would hit. He looked up in amazement when he heard his friend's shouts. "Saucepan!" he yelled. "Dear old saucepan! Fancy seeing you!" "Glue?" said the saucepan man, suddenly hearing all wrong again. "Glue? No, I've not got glue with me, but I can soon make some for you." "Still the silly old saucepan, aren't you?" cried Mr. What's-his-name. "Come down here. I didn't say anything about glue. Come and have a cup of tea with me. The kettle's boiling." "I don't want oiling," said the saucepan man, though he really sounded as if he did. He was so full of clangs and clatters. "I'll come and have tea and a talk with you. Hurrah!" He put his foot on the ladder, but unfortunately he stepped on a kettle that had caught round his leg, and down he went. Clatter, bang, crash, smash, clang. Mr. What's-his-name caught at him as he went past, and down he went too, rolling off the ladder, down the branch, past Moonface's door, and down the tree. "There they go," said Moonface in delight. "All mixed up with kettles and saucepans. What a joke. They'll give old Mother Washalot a fright if they fall into her wash tub." The children laughed till they cried. The old saucepan man was really so funny, and they couldn't imagine what people in the tree would think as he rolled down with such a clanging and banging. "It's quite safe to go down now," said Joe, peering down the ladder. "They've disappeared. I shouldn't wonder if they're at the bottom of the tree by now. Come on, Moonface." So down the ladder they all went, slid down the topmost branch and opened Moonface's door. Silky was still there, looking scared out of her life. She gave a scream of joy when she saw them. "Why are you looking so frightened?" asked Moonface, giving her a hug. "Oh, goodness. A thunderbolt or something fell out of the sky just now and rolled crashing down the tree," said Silky. "That was only the saucepan man and Mr. What's-his-name," said Joe, laughing, and he told her the whole story. Silky laughed till her sides ached. She ran out of the door and peeped down the tree. "Look," she said, pointing. "Can you see far down there between the branches?" They all looked, and they saw Mr. What's-his-name and the old saucepan man climbing painfully up to Mr. What's-his-name's home, both talking together at the top of their voices. "They've forgotten all about us," said Joe joyfully. "Now, for goodness sake, Moonface, don't go putting acorns into What's-his-name's mouth again. Let's have something to eat, and then we must go home down your slippery slip." So they all five sat round Moonface's funny room and ate some pop biscuits that Silky fetched, and drank acorn-ade, which was made of acorns and was most delicious. Then it was time for the children to go, and they chose cushions, sat at the top of the big tree slide, pushed off, and flew down the inside of the tree, sliding round and round and round, until they shot out of the trapdoor at the bottom onto the cushions of moss. Then they ran home as fast as they could, for they were late. "I expect the old saucepan man's gone back to his queer little land by now," said Joe as they turned in at their gate. But he hadn't. He came to see them the very next day, his saucepans clanging so loudly that Mother looked quite alarmed. "Whoever in the world is that?" she said, as the saucepan man came in at the gate. That's all for now. As I said, sorry this one was a little bit late. I shall do the next one tomorrow at the usual time of about 4 o'clock. So by the time it's uploaded, it should be up there by about 5 o'clock. All right. See you again soon. Bye-bye.